The rain had been falling since late evening, the kind of steady, whispering rain that made the small town of Redwood Falls feel even quieter than usual. Streetlights reflected on the wet pavement, and the wind carried the faint rustle of leaves through empty streets. Inside a small blue house at the end of Maple Street, the lights were off. The curtains were drawn. To anyone passing by, it looked like just another peaceful home on a sleepy street. But inside that house, something terrible had already happened. The next morning, when Emily Carter didn't show up for her shift at the hospital, no one thought much of it at first. Nurses sometimes ran late, and Emily lived alone. But when an hour passed and her phone went straight to voicemail, concern began to grow. Emily wasn't the type to miss work without warning. At 34, she had built a reputation as one of the most dependable nurses in the emergency department. Patients loved her gentle voice and calm demeanor. Her coworkers often joked that Emily could stay calm in the middle of chaos. So when she didn't show up, it didn't feel right. After several failed calls, one of the nurses contacted Emily's sister, Laura Bennett. Laura lived about 20 minutes away. As soon as she heard the news, she grabbed her keys and drove straight to Emily's house, trying to convince herself there was a simple explanation. Maybe Emily had overslept. Maybe her phone battery died. Maybe she had taken a sudden sick day. But the moment Laura pulled into the driveway, something felt wrong. Emily's car was parked outside exactly where it always was. The house looked quiet. Too quiet. Laura walked to the front door and knocked. No answer. She knocked again, louder this time. Still nothing. Her heart began to pound as she reached for the doorknob. The door slowly creaked open. It wasn't locked. "Emily," she called. Her voice echoed softly through the hallway. The living room looked perfectly normal. A blanket lay folded on the couch. A coffee mug rested on the table. Emily's purse sat neatly beside it. But her phone was there too. Emily never went anywhere without her phone. Laura's stomach tightened as she stepped further into the house. "Emily," she called again. Silence. She checked the kitchen, the bathroom, the bedroom. Emily was nowhere to be found. But in the bedroom, something caught Laura's eye. A faint brown stain on the carpet near the side of the bed. At first it looked like spilled coffee. But something about it made her uneasy. Her hands started shaking as she stepped back and dialed 911. Within an hour, the house was filled with investigators. Police officers moved carefully through the rooms while crime scene technicians photographed every inch of the house. At first glance, there were no signs of forced entry. The windows were locked. The doors were intact. It didn't look like a burglary. It didn't look like a struggle. But when forensic investigators tested the stain in the bedroom, the results sent a chill through the entire investigation. It was blood. Emily's blood. But Emily herself was gone. Detectives immediately began questioning everyone who knew her. Friends described her as warm and thoughtful. She volunteered at community events and spent most of her free time with family. She didn't party much and rarely went out late. She didn't have enemies. But one name kept surfacing during interviews. Daniel Hayes. Emily's boyfriend. Daniel was 38 and owned a small auto repair shop on the edge of town. People described him as charming and confident, the kind of man who could walk into a room and make everyone laugh within minutes. He and Emily had been dating for about a year. When detectives arrived at his shop to question him, Daniel seemed relaxed. Maybe a little too relaxed. He wiped grease from his hands and greeted them with an easy smile. "Is this about Emily?" he asked. "Yes," one detective said. "When was the last time you saw her?" Daniel leaned against a tool cabinet, thinking. "2 nights ago," he replied. "We had dinner at her place. Watched a movie. What happened after that? I went home. Everything was normal." He shrugged casually. "I thought she'd be at work today." His answers came quickly, smoothly. almost as if he had already rehearsed them. Detectives searched for inconsistencies, but there was nothing they could immediately prove. Daniel had no visible injuries, no witnesses placing him at Emily's house after that night, and no clear evidence linking him to a crime. With no body and very little physical evidence, the investigation began to stall. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. Emily Carter was officially listed as a missing person. Search teams combed through nearby forests and riverbanks. Flyers appeared on telephone poles. Volunteers organized search parties. But no one found anything. The house on Maple Street sat empty, its windows dark. Meanwhile, Daniel Hayes returned to his life. He reopened his shop. He went out with friends. And eventually, he started dating again. Nearly 9 months after Emily disappeared, a woman walked slowly into the Redwood Falls Police Department. Her name was Sarah Miller. She looked exhausted, as if she had been carrying a heavy secret for far too long. Her hands trembled slightly as she approached the front desk. "I need to speak to someone," she said quietly. "What about?" the officer asked. Sarah swallowed hard. "It's about Emily Carter." Within minutes, detectives led her into a small interview room. Sarah sat stiffly in the chair, twisting her fingers together. "Tell us what you know," one detective said gently. Sarah stared at the table for a long moment before speaking. "I dated Daniel Hayes," she said. The detectives exchanged a quick glance. "When?" one of them asked. "A few months ago, after Emily disappeared," she took a shaky breath. "At first he seemed normal, funny, charming. Just like everyone says." Her voice began to tremble. "But one night, he said something." "What did he say?" Sarah hesitated. "He had been drinking," she said. "We were sitting in his living room. He started talking about mistakes, about doing things you can't undo." The room felt suddenly smaller. "And then?" the detective asked. Sarah looked up, her eyes glossy with fear. "He said Emily wouldn't bother him anymore." The detectives leaned forward. "What do you mean?" Sarah's voice dropped to a whisper. "He told me they had a fight. A bad one." According to Sarah, Daniel said the argument started when Emily confronted him about cheating. The fight grew louder, angrier. Then, in a moment of rage, he struck her, hard. She fell beside the bed and hit her head. At first, Daniel thought she had just been knocked unconscious. But when she didn't move, when she stopped breathing, panic took over. Instead of calling for help, he made a different choice. A darker choice. He wrapped her body in a blanket and carried her out of the house in the middle of the night. Sarah's hands were shaking badly now. "He said he buried her," she whispered. The detectives sat in stunned silence. "Where?" one finally asked. Sarah swallowed. "At his shop." The next morning, police arrived at Daniel Hayes' auto repair shop with a search warrant. They searched every corner of the property. Toolboxes, garages, storage rooms. For hours, they found nothing. Then one officer noticed something unusual behind the building. A small tool shed. Inside, the concrete floor looked newer than the rest. It had been poured recently. Investigators brought in heavy equipment. The sound of jackhammers echoed across the quiet property as they broke through the concrete slab. Beneath it, hidden in the dirt below, they found human remains. The forensic tests confirmed the truth everyone feared. It was Emily Carter. 9 months after she vanished, her body had been less than a mile away the entire time. Daniel Hayes was arrested the next morning. At first he denied everything. But the evidence was overwhelming. The blood in Emily's bedroom. The buried remains. Sarah's testimony. After hours of questioning, Daniel's calm facade finally cracked. He admitted the argument had spiraled out of control. He claimed he never meant to kill her. But when she stopped breathing, fear took over. And instead of saving her, he buried the truth. During the trial, Sarah Miller took the witness stand. Her voice trembled as she described Daniel's drunken confession. The courtroom sat in complete silence. The prosecutor asked her one final question. "Why did you wait 9 months before coming forward?" Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "I was scared," she said quietly. "I thought if he could do that to her, he could do it to me." She paused before whispering the words that would haunt the entire case. "I wish I had told the police sooner." Daniel Hayes was convicted of second-degree murder and sentenced to 30 years in prison. Emily's family finally had answers. But as they left the courthouse, the weight of what had happened lingered in everyone's mind. Because for 9 long months, the truth had been sitting just beneath a layer of concrete, hidden. Silent, waiting for someone brave enough to speak. But by the time she did, it was already too late.